Lobster, known as the king of seafood with a market worth of $6 billion, has had a long and fascinating history. There was a time when lobster was so despised that it was referred to as the cockroach of the sea or a poor man's food, and was only served to prisoners and servants. The story of how lobster went from being a hated food to a delicacy is one of cultural, economic, and technological changes. In the late 8th century, during the age of Viking raids, fishermen were traveling out into deeper and darker waters due to advances in boat design. These vessels were perfect for deep-sea fishing, and they came at a perfect time. Meat-free religious holidays had been introduced, but in the eyes of the church, seafood like fish and lobsters didn't count as meat, making them an ideal replacement. Only the richest could afford to have lobsters transported from the boat to their kitchen in time before they went bad, earning lobster a reputation for being associated with wealth and privilege across Europe. They were even featured in paintings as a way to show wealth. In contrast, in the Americas, the situation was entirely different. Along the coast of the New World, 2-foot-high piles of lobsters washed ashore regularly. They were so plentiful that Native Americans not only ate them as a source of protein, but also used them as fertilizer and fish bait. As colonists moved into the region, lobsters were so devalued that they were called a poor man's food and fed to prisoners and servants. Servants who had a say in their contracts refused to eat lobster more than 3 times a week, and urban legends claim that prisoners believed lobster meals to be such a cruel and unusual punishment that it led to prison riots. This was because lobsters were being cooked the wrong way, resulting in them going bad quickly, and people technically eating rotten meat. Lobsters were killed like any other meat, and what people didn't realize was that when killed, lobsters release an enzyme that rots the rest of their body, giving the meat a bad smell, a mushy texture, and a terrible taste. This led to lobsters being given a reputation as the cockroaches of the sea. The shame of eating lobsters was so great that people would discreetly hide the shells, fearing that others would catch them eating it. But eventually, lobsters would slowly claw their way back to their former reputation of being associated with wealth and privilege. In the early 19th century, a French chef and inventor named Nicolas Appert developed a method to preserve food, canning. The process involved placing food inside a sealed bottle or jar, then heating it to sanitize and kill any bacteria. The next year, an English inventor named Peter Durand improved on Nicolas' method by using tin-coated cans instead of sealed bottles or jars. Canning then spread from Europe to the US. Decades later, a cannery in the US set up an assembly line for lobsters, and despite some setbacks, soon they set a trend that created an industry. Along with competing canneries, fishermen began to haul lobsters back to their homes and can them themselves. Meanwhile, railway managers schemed up a way to serve lobster to passengers who didn't know about its reputation. They claimed lobster was a rare, luxury item, and passengers not only believed them, but they loved it. Some passengers even began to request lobsters when dining out. Around this time, the Atlantic coast of the US became the center of the lobster industry, and the demand for lobsters kept increasing. In the late 19th century, the first lobster pound was built in Maine, which allowed live lobsters to be kept in captivity until they were sold. This innovation allowed for year-round availability of lobsters, further increasing their popularity. The use of refrigerated railcars also allowed for the transportation of live lobsters to other parts of the country, leading to even more widespread demand. In the early 20th century, lobster was still considered a luxury item, and it was mainly served in high-end restaurants. However, by the mid-20th century, advances in fishing technology and the development of the lobster trap made lobsters more accessible to the general public. The invention of the lobster trap allowed for larger catches, which led to a decrease in the price of lobsters. This, combined with increased demand, led to the growth of the lobster industry and the expansion of the market. Today, lobsters are enjoyed by people all over the world and are considered a delicacy. They are caught in waters all around the globe, and the industry continues to grow. However, with this growth comes concerns about sustainability, and many organizations are working to ensure that lobster fishing is done in a responsible and sustainable manner. In conclusion, the history of lobster is a story of how cultural, economic, and technological changes can greatly impact the perception and consumption of a food. Lobster, once considered a poor man's food and a cockroach of the sea, is now a delicacy enjoyed by people all over the world. Canning, refrigeration, and fishing technology have played a major role in the development of the lobster industry and its rise to the top of the seafood market.